Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to deal with COPD. COPD is the third largest killer in the world right now. I have kept a image for you that is the Vodafone pug. Like the Vodafone pug, that this disease is going to follow you wherever you go. Starting with your final year exams in MBBS, at least 10% of you will get it as a case in medicine. COPD will be there in your practice during internship and in the future, irrespective of what specialty you take. Your surgical patients will have a comorbid COPD, your orthopedic patients will have COPD, your gynecological patients you have COPD. So basically this is going to follow you around for a long time, hence it is a very important disease. I've broken down the definition for you. COPD is a common preventable and treatable disease that is characterized by persistent respiratory symptoms and airflow limitation due to airway and or alveolar abnormalities, usually caused by significant exposure to noxious particles or gases. Here you have to remember that it is very common, it is preventable and treatable. The main problems is persistent respiratory symptoms due to airflow limitations with or without alveolar abnormalities and usually caused by exposure to noxious particles. Coming to causative agents of COPD, the most commonest cause for the development of COPD is the chronic noxious particle exposure, that is by cigarette smoking. It is in a negative trend in the developed countries owing to awareness programs and negative publicity. It is still a problem in a developing country like us. Please note that the use of hookahs, that is a current trend in our generation, especially colored smoke hookahs, plus the trend of using or smoking marijuana, and the latest trend of e-cigarettes, if abused in a chronic fashion, can also lead to COPD. The second most commonest cause for development of COPD is occupational exposure. To specifically talk about the patient who come to our hospital is tobacco dust. A large number of women have the occupation of rolling beedies. They are exposed to tobacco dust. And if you talk about men who work in wood mills, have chronic exposure to wood dust. So they should be included in your history taking. And then there is the use of biomass fuels, the use of wood to cook or boil water. Chronic exposure to the fumes while cooking can lead to COPD. You can ask any patient over the age of 65. LPG is a relatively new thing for them. They have been using biomass fuels for cooking since for at least 10 to 20 years. Then there is exposure to inorganic dust, chemical agents or fumes. The other cause being outdoor air pollution. Whenever you hear outdoor air pollution, you think about Delhi. But it is not just Delhi. It is about most of the urbanized metropolitan cities of our country. Outdoor air pollution basically contributes to the lungs' total burden of inhaled particles. Another cause being poorly controlled bronchial asthma. A chronic bronchial asthma, poorly treated asthma can lead to COPD. Now, the causes for COPD that are not related to exposure to noxious particle would include lung growth and development. meaning any factor that affects the lung growth during gestation and childhood, which could be low birth weight, recurrent respiratory infection, has the potential to increase an individual's risk of developing COPD. Another being alpha 1 antitrypsin deficiency, which is a mutation in a gene encoding matrix of the MMP12 gene. To talk about the pathology of COPD, repeated and chronic insults by noxious particles lead to a chronic inflammatory response that leads to disruption of normal repair and defense mechanisms of our airways that results in small airway fibrosis. It also induces parenchymal tissue destruction resulting in emphysema, and this in turn causes gas trapping and progressive airflow limitation. To talk about the pathogenesis of COPD, the primary being oxidative stress. You might have heard about the role of antioxidants in the prevention of malignancies. So basically, oxidants, a high level of it, are generated by cigarette smoke or released from activated inflammatory cells that contribute to the development of COPD. Another one being protease and antiprotease imbalance. Proteases basically break down the connective tissue components, and antiproteases, especially alpha 1 antitrypsin, prevents it. So when you have a deficiency of alpha 1 antitrypsin, there is an imbalance, and so proteases try to break down the connective tissue components. Now this leads to a destruction of elastin of our lungs, leading to emphysema. The third one being inflammatory cells. Now there is an increased macrophages in the peripheral airways, lung parenchyma and pulmonary vessels, plus increased activated neutrophils and lymphocytes owing to the chronic and repeated exposure to noxious particles, which release inflammatory mediators, and as a chronic process this induces structural changes leading to peribronchial and interstitial fibrosis. Now this is the pathogenesis of COPD. For your basic understanding, just remember smoking leads to inflammatory cells and mediator release. They induce structural changes resulting in fibrosis leading to COPD. I have included pathophysiology in this lecture for your better understanding. If you have any confusions regarding this, please refer to Gold Guidelines of 2017 and 18. Everything is clearly explained there. Now the primary problem is airflow limitation. When you have chronic insults that leads to repeated inflammation, there will be fibrosis and exudation leading to gas trapping and reduced FEV1 and FEV1 by FVC ratio. Now this gas trapping or air trapping will lead to hyperinflation. Added with the reduced inspiratory capacity, impairment of contractile properties of the respiratory muscles leads to increased work of breathing and exertional dyspnea. Now when you have reduced ventilation, that is due to impaired ventilatory drive and increased dead space due to air trapping, this leads to hypoxia and hypercapnia. CO2 retention mixed with air trapping and reduced ventilatory drive leads to ventilation perfusion mismatch that causes gas exchange abnormalities. Another one being mucus hypersecretion. Now earlier COPD was classified into emphysema and chronic bronchitis. You might have heard of pink puffers and blue botters. You will find it in your UG textbooks. But right now, there is no distinct classification between chronic bronchitis and emphysema type variant of COPD, because every COPD may initiate as a chronic bronchitis patient which progresses to emphysema. Now, why is there mucus hypersecretion? Now, there is a chronic productive cough that is due to repeated airway irritation, and this leads to increase in the goblet cells and enlarged submucosal glands, leading to increased secretion of airway mucus. Once you have gas exchanged abnormalities, this will progress to pulmonary artery hypertension, which is a late feature of COPD. There will be hypoxic vasoconstriction of small pulmonary arteries with structural changes, including intimal hyperplasia and later on smooth muscle hypertrophy. Add inflammatory response in vessels due to endothelial cell dysfunction and loss of pulmonary capillary bed in emphysema. This leads to an increased pressure in the pulmonary circulation, leading to pulmonary artery hypertension, leading to right ventricular hypertrophy, which progresses to right cardiac failure. A COPD patient will present to you with symptoms of gradual onset and progressive dyspnea and wheezing, of worsening MMRC scale. Cough is a common symptom, especially in chronic bronchitis. There will be increased sputum production in exacerbation. And exacerbation is the worsening of symptoms that require change in medication. Fever will be a symptom in an infective exacerbation. Hemoptysis may be present in COPD patients with comorbidities, which may be a tubercular infection or malignancy. On history taking, do assess for smoking. Smoking index and packet years are primarily based on cigarette smoking. Most of your patients will be BD smokers. Now, there are studies that show BD smoking is comparatively worsened to a cigarette smoker because of the inhalation of larger particles in a BD smoker due to the lack of a filter, and a contradictory study showing that cigarette smoking is worse than BD smoker because of the larger concentration of tobacco present in a cigarette. Do assess for occupational exposure. As discussed before, somebody who is having an occupation of BD rolling, patients who work in wood mills, people who are exposed to outdoor air pollution, people who work in shops near an urbanized road, traffic police officers, etc. Recurrent symptomatic worsening will help you in assessing the grading of COPD and its treatment. When a young COPD patient presents to you, do assess for preterm labor, the need for neonatal ICU, recurrent respiratory childhood infection, and whether he is already on any inhaled medications. Coming to signs in a COPD patient, a typical COPD patient is usually underweight. Nutritional anemias or anemias of chronic illnesses are not uncommon. An obese COPD patient is considerably difficult to treat as he comes with multiple comorbidities related to obesity, including hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, obstructive sleep apneas, etc. Clubbing is not very common in COPD patients unless it is related to other chronic comorbidities of the lung. If present, it is secondary to chronic hypoxia. A raised JVP can be expected in pulmonary artery hypertension and right cardiac failure. Pulmonary artery hypertension leads to hepatic congestion, which can cause icterus. Similarly, pedal edema also. Coming to the systemic examination, inspection, you can notice the patient will be tachypneic. Do remember the normal respiratory rate in children, adult men and women. There will be tachycardia. The ratio of tachypnea to tachycardia will be approximately at 1:4. You can notice supraclavicular hollowing. There might be intercostal indrawing. Use of accessory muscles of inspiration during exacerbation. Do remember muscles of inspiration, accessory muscles of inspiration and muscles of expiration. Note the shape of the chest. It could be barrel shaped. Note the subcostal angle, and a visible apex beat will be considerably medial to the midclavicular line. I have kept an image of a chest X-ray of a typical emphysematous lung COPD patient for better understanding of palpation and percussion. On palpation, the apex beat will be significantly medial to the midclavicular line. You can see the widening of the intercostal spaces in the X-ray itself. Chest expansion in a COPD patient will be minimal. Percussion, when you deal with percussion of the respiratory system, characterize it as percussion of the right side anteriorly, including the intercostal spaces, laterally and posteriorly. From the X-ray itself, you can understand the percussion of the right side. Liver dullness usually expected at the 5th or 6th intercostal space may be considerably pushed down. There is no surprise if you get a liver dullness at the 10th or 11th intercostal space. Notice the X-ray that the right cardiac border is retrosternal. Similarly, percussion of the right cardiac border may not be possible, and it might be retrosternal. Similarly, on the left side, the left cardiac border should coincide with the apex beat, considerably medial to the midclavicular line. Do remember, if the apex beat does not coincide with the left cardiac border, it usually turns out to be a pericardial effusion. Coming to trough space, again the trough space will be pushed down due to the emphysematous lung. Positive findings on auscultation in a COPD patient will include a bilaterally equal diminished breath sound, bilateral polyphonic wheeze, and increased forced expiratory time. Absence of wheeze does not signify a milder form of the disease, as an advanced COPD patient will present to you with almost silent lung on auscultation. COPD is graded by the MMRC dyspnea score, the airflow limitation severity by CAT scoring, and number of exacerbations per year with FEV1 by FVC in a porous bronchodilator PFT. COPD grading will allow us to assess the severity of the disease, upon which we can base our treatment modalities on. COPD grading dyspnea scores is a common question for you during your medicine final year practicals. Other scoring will include the NYHM classification and the MRC dyspnea score. Dyspnea scoring is well explained in your UG textbooks. Now, what are the investigations to do on a suspected COPD patient. The first investigation to be done in every respiratory case is a chest X-ray. On a chest X-ray, you might find a bilaterally hyperinflated lung with tapering vascular markings. A normal chest X-ray does not rule out COPD, as the patient may be having chronic bronchitis variant. Sputum is sent for culture and acid-fast bacilli. A spirometry will reveal the severity of obstruction and grading, and ABG will help you to assess the need for oxygen supplementation and further treatment modalities. Other investigations includes an ECG. An ECG, you might see P pulmonale and tachycardia. It will also help you in assessing arrhythmias or any acute cardiac events. A CBC will help you identify anemia. Leukocytosis with neutrophilia is quite common in infective exacerbation. Eosinophilia is also common in COPD exacerbations. Do note that not to base your treatment with antihelminthics just because you found a COPD patients with eosinophilia. LFT, as explained before, a late feature being pulmonary artery hypertension progressing to portal vein hypertension that leads to hepatic congestion and icterus, a deranged LFT may be expected. In KFT or a renal function test, impaired renal function is present due to decreased glomerular filtration rate. You can identify a concealed chronic renal failure also. When you do a serum electrolytes, COPD patients are predisposed to decreased sodium and potassium. Decreased potassium levels can be expected in patients being treated with short-acting beta-2 agonist, most usually together with diuretics. Echo will be done to identify pulmonary artery hypertension. According to the latest pulmonary artery hypertension guidelines, if you add an increased PASP in echo, it means you are too late. So do base your treatment of COPD patients with diuretics. In exacerbation, CRP and procalcitonin may be raised. CT can be done in selective patients. In COPD, where a chronic noxious particle exposure cannot be identified, or in a young COPD patients, a serum alpha-1 antitrypsin can be done. Treatment of a COPD patient is primarily based on bronchodilators, which will include an inhaled bronchodilator supported by an oral bronchodilator if indicated. Inhaled bronchodilators will include beta-2 agonists. A short-acting beta-2 agonist example is salbutamol. There are long-acting beta-2 agonists, for example formoterol and indacaterol. The common side effect of a beta-2 agonist is resting tachycardia, somatic tremors, and hypokalemia if patient is also being treated with a loop diuretic. Inhaled anticholinergics or antimuscarinic agents are added to the bronchodilator therapy. Ipratropium is an example for a short-acting antimuscarinic agent. Long-acting antimuscarinic agents include glycopyrronium and tiotropium. Side effects of SABA and LAMA will include dryness of mouth, bitter taste, and it has found to worsen a benign prostatic hyperplasia. Inhaled corticosteroids are typically indicated in patients who present with eosinophilic exacerbations and added to patients who are chronic asthmatics. ICS agents include budesonide, fluticasone, and beclomethasone. Methylxanthines can be added to the primary bronchodilator therapy in a selective group of patients. It should never be considered as a primary bronchodilator. For example, theophylline, derofilin, or cibrofilin can lead to arrhythmias as a side effect. Most COPD patients are susceptible to cardiovascular diseases and it may worsen their arrhythmias or lead to arrhythmias. Surprisingly, the Indian subcontinent population tolerate methylxanthines well. Another point to note is that clearance of methylxanthine declines with age and benefits of methylxanthines occur only when near toxic doses are given. Phosphodiesterase 4 inhibitors like rofimilast can be given to a select group of COPD patients. Glucocorticoid therapy, especially in exacerbations or an eosinophilic variant exacerbation of COPD patients, have been found to reduce the rate of treatment failure, rate of relapse, and improves lung function and breathlessness. Mucolytic and antioxidant therapy, for example, N-acetylcysteine, is given to patients, especially patients of chronic bronchitis variant. When you have a young COPD patients with alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, alpha-1 antitrypsin augmentation therapy can be given. So the primary line of management of COPD patient is by inhaled bronchodilators, which will include beta-2 agonist, antimuscarinic agents, added on with inhaled corticosteroids, and these medicines are delivered by inhalation delivery devices, which can be a dry powder inhaler, a metered-dose inhaler, or a nebulizer. There are studies that shows that the efficacy is same throughout the inhaler devices, but there are also studies that indicate that a delivery device that delivers medication in smaller particles are better. The smallest particle delivery inhalation device is a metered-dose inhaler, followed by a dry powder inhaler, and the largest particle size is by a nebulizer. So you have to bear in mind that the selection of the inhaler devices should be tailored specific for each patient, as there are multiple factors to be thought about regarding a patient's general health condition, age of the patient that might compromise the technique of the inhaler, and cost. Oxygen supplementation is required in patients with COPD exacerbations with hypoxia. Oxygen delivery can be done with nasal prongs, O2 mask, or venturi mask. Usually, a delivery device of less than 4 liters per minute is preferred for COPD patients. That is commonly done by a nasal prong. Higher oxygen delivery can be carefully decided with O2 mask or venturi mask, or in COPD with respiratory failure, we use a non-invasive ventilation. A invasive mechanical ventilation is preferred if the patient is not tolerating an NIV, if patient is post-arrest, based on his degree of consciousness, as CO2 retention may cause CO2 narcosis, if the patient is having severe hemodynamic instability or severe arrhythmias. In chronic respiratory failure patients, A long-term oxygen therapy (LTOT) is preferred by giving oxygen for more than 15 hours per day. Patients who require LTOT are selected based on an ABG, a resting ABG with a PaO2 of less than 55 millimeter of mercury, or for example with somebody with a resting saturation of less than 88%. Pulmonary rehabilitation should be involved in the treatment of a COPD patient. Advice should be given on smoking cessation. A psychiatric evaluation should be done as COPD patients are apprehensive about their disease and might be depressed. Chest physiotherapy is done to strengthen the respiratory muscles by breathing exercises and incentive spirometry. Dietary advice should be given to COPD patients. Basically, a non-pharmacological treatment of a COPD patient will include education of the patient regarding his disease, rehabilitation, controlled physical activity, and nutrition. Vaccinations should be advised for stable COPD patients. Vaccinations for COPD include pneumococcal vaccine and influenza vaccine. Pneumococcal vaccine PPSV 23 is to be given to COPD patients under the age of 65, and it has shown to reduce the incidence of community-acquired pneumonia in them. Above the age of 65, the vaccine is repeated every 5 years. Pneumococcal vaccine PCV13 or PCV10 is an optional vaccine even for pediatric age group patients. It is given to young COPD patients also. To talk about influenza vaccine is given once yearly. It will cover all influenzas including H1N1. Let me remind you, H1N1 till date have killed 540,000 individuals. Yet it is an optional vaccine for us, and you can imagine how many of us in the healthcare sector have been vaccinated against influenza. Now, this is in a time and age when all of us are eagerly waiting for a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. Surgical management of a COPD patient is done only for a select few. It includes bronchoscopic lung volume reduction surgeries, pullectomies, or endobronchial valve replacement surgeries. Lung transplantation is only considered for a select young COPD patients. Management of COPD is not complete without the treatment of its comorbidities, the commonest being cardiovascular diseases, including ischemic heart disease, heart failure, arrhythmias, peripheral vascular diseases, and hypertension. Other comorbidities include osteoporosis, anxiety and depression, obstructive sleep apneas, metabolic syndrome and diabetes, GERD, bronchiectasis, and definitely rule out or consider malignancies in chronic smokers with a smoking index of more than 400. Thank you for your time. I hope you have understood the basics of COPD. The reference for today's lecture was Gold Guidelines 2020, which is freely available online. Thank you.